What's up everybody? Welcome back or to the channel. So today we're actually going to be doing another project around the house, and what we're going to be doing today is building a picnic table. Now this one's going to be not your typical picnic table. This one's going to be more of a square 4x4 table with 4 attached seating areas to the table as shown in the picture above. Now this is a very simple project. It does not take a whole lot of wood and it does not take a whole lot of time. So if you are looking for something that's a little more unique and different than your typical picnic table, then stay tuned because I'm going to show you how to make one. Okay, so we're back. Now this is all you're going to need to do this job. So just to remind you, I will put a list of materials that you're going to need in the description of this video. So moving on, what we're going to need is 8 2x6s by 8 feet long. You're going to need 6 2x4s 8 feet long. You're going to need 1 2x6 10 foot long and 1 2x4 10 feet long. So being that this is June of 2021, we are still in a pretty high inflation rate for lumber. So again, if you really want to try to minimize the amount of wood you're going to need, this is probably the best way to go, unless you want to get less wood but longer pieces and cut them. But again, the average person doesn't always have a way to get 12 and 20 foot boards home. So we're going to just focus on 8 and 10 footers for now. Now, this is untreated wood. Now, typically you don't really want to have treated wood as a picnic table just due to the harsh chemicals that are in the actual treatment of the wood. You don't want that on your skin, even worse, next to your food. So what I recommend is typically going with a cedar or something like that. But right now, finding any kind of wood is hard to come by. So I couldn't find any cedar. I didn't want to use treated lumber. So I just went with untreated wood. What I do recommend is painting it or staining it once you're done, because that is going to protect the wood. So that's pretty much all you're going to need is this wood here. You're going to need some type of paint or stain, and you're going to need some type of hardware. So I always recommend some exterior screws like this. So I already had these laying around extra from when I built my deck, so I didn't have to go buy more. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse these. And I did buy stain for my deck because I do plan on staining it very soon. So I already had the stain, which I should have enough left over to stain this. So in this video, we're not going to be staining this picnic table, but I will show you how to cut all the boards and put it all together and make something that looks really, really good that you and your family and friends are going to be able to enjoy. So let's get started. Okay, so next we want to go ahead and start marking our wood for all of our cuts. So let me go ahead and start working on marking up all my cuts, and then we'll come back here shortly. Okay, so we are back and we got all of the wood laid out on the tables here, and I've already started making all of my cut marks. Now, what you're going to probably want is definitely some type of a measuring tape. I always recommend any type of woodworking projects like this. Get yourself a speed square like this. You could buy these cheap at the hardware store for probably less than $10. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but again, something like this will definitely help with a lot of your marks. Get yourself some type of a pencil. If you're getting carpentry pencils, it's always nice to have a carpentry pencil sharpener. So I've already made all of my cut marks. So let me just go and show you what we're going to do. You're going to start with your 10-foot sections. Remember, there's 1 2x6 by 10, and you have 1 2x4 by 10. Now, I've already marked them down so I can remember. So on the 10-foot 2x6, and you're going to mark out 4 28.5-inch marks. So what I did here, as you can see here, I just measured in, got my 28.5 here, took a measurement from there, 28.5 to there, 28.5 to here, 28.5 to there. So 4 28.5s, and then this little piece right here is just going to be scrap. On your 2x4 by 10, 4 28.5 marks on that as well. Same thing. Measure in 28.5, 28.5, 28.5, 28.5. This little section here is going to be scrap. So you got that. Then you're going to take one of your 2x4 by 8s and you're going to do 2 36.5 cuts. You're going to take another 2x4 here and you're going to do 2 37.5 cuts. Then you're going to take another 2x4 by 8 and you're gonna do 4 23-inch cuts. You're gonna go to another 2x4 and you're gonna do 4 22-inch cuts. You're gonna take 2 more 2x4x8s. When you're cutting your 8 2x4s at the 18 3/8, you actually wanna make sure you're cutting the board itself at about 21 3/8, because once you miter the angled cuts, you want the short side to the long side to be 18 3/8. So if we just look at this long side to the short side, you're right at about 18 3/8. That's what you want. So you're gonna have to cut these 8 2x4s at roughly 21 3/8. So just make sure when you are making your cuts that your angled 45-degree cuts are parallel to each other. These are gonna be seat braces, so they're gonna sit like this, and your seat is gonna sit on top of here as a brace. So you wanna make sure that your angled cuts are parallel to each other. Make these 8 cuts at about 21 3/8. That way when you miter your angles, the long side to the short side will be 18 3/8. And then with your 8 2x6s, you're gonna end up cutting 16 47.5 cuts. So I've already pre-marked every single thing here. So again, all you're gonna do is measure in. And what's nice about a speed square, you can just drop it on there, get your square 90-degree, draw a line, boom, move down the line. So again, speed squares are super easy. So now that we have everything already laid out and I marked it all out, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna start cutting everything. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use my saw here. Once everything is cut, then we're gonna work on assembly. Okay, so I just got done pre-cutting everything. So now everything is ready to start the assembly. Now it's getting kind of late, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to finish this tonight. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is stop the video now, and we're gonna pick it right back up tomorrow night. So stay tuned, we're gonna start the assembly next. Okay, so the first step we wanna do in assembly is we're gonna start working with our legs. Now, what you wanna do is you wanna take your 28.5-inch 2x6s that we cut, there's 4 of them, and your 4 28.5-inch 2x4s. So start with like 2 on one side, because you're gonna use one as a brace. Take one of your 2x6s and lay it on top. You wanna line it up with this one here, okay? So line it up, and then we're gonna attach about 3 to 4 screws along this one side. Essentially, you're gonna make an L, because when you're done, this board goes away, and you're gonna be left with just that, like an L. But I always like to use this here as a brace while you're screwing it on. So once you do that, you're gonna make 4 of those. So let me do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I got the first one done. As you can see here, that's basically what you want it to look like. You want your 2x6 mounted to the side of the 2x4, just like so. All right, so that's how we had it sitting when we screwed the screws on, but that's basically what you want it to look like. So now we got to do 3 more, so let me go ahead and finish that up, and I'll be right back. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to start assembling the frame for the legs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of the L-shaped legs we just made. Now you might have a better way of doing this, but this is what I'm doing. What you want to do is lay down the 2x6 flat to the table with a 2x4 facing up on the right side. Then you're gonna lay another L-shaped bracket with the 2x6 on the table with a 2x4 facing up on the left side. So basically you want the 2x4s facing up on the inner side, okay? Then you wanna take a 36.5-inch 2x4 that we cut earlier and lay it down flat, but use like a piece of 2x4 scrap below it. And basically what you wanna do is you want that 2x4 to line up with this other 2x4, not the 2x6, okay? You want it to line up right here, all right? Now this is the easiest way I found to do it, and then we're just gonna throw 2 screws in on the side to hold this 2x4 to this 2x4. But we're gonna do that on both sides, and that'll be one set, and then we're gonna come back and do the next. So let me start with this, and we'll be right back. Okay, so once you assemble that, it's gonna look like this, okay? You're gonna have a 2x6 facing you with a 2x4 facing away from you, with your brace coming on the 2x4 across, up and down to this 2x4 here. So that's basically what you want that first table leg to look like. This is the 36.5-inch board, okay? Then we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to this side with, again, the 2x6 facing you, 2x4 here. Now I'm gonna lay them back down on the table like this. Okay. Just like that. So that's what you're gonna do here too. So again, same thing. You're gonna lay the 2x6 down on the table with the 2x4 facing up on the inside. 2x6 on the table with the 2x4 facing up on the inside. And you're gonna take your 36.5-inch board, long ways, attaching it to the 2x4, just like we did on the first step. So let me go ahead and tighten that up and we'll move on. Okay, so on this step, set your table legs up so that you know how to line up your boards. What you're gonna do is you want your 2x6s on the inner side, this step, okay? Then what you wanna do is take your 37.5-inch board that we cut, and you're gonna place that in between the 2x6s, but offset from the 2x4. So you want it to be like right like that, okay? So you can always just take a 2x4 scrap, like this. Line it up, with your piece of scrap piece, just to line it up to the edge of the 2x6 if you really want to get the proper distance. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and brace this up. Now you might want to have somebody hold the other side over here to brace it, or brace it in a different fashion, but that's what we got to do on both sides. So again, you want a 37.5-inch on this side and one on that side. You want to attach to the 2x6s and you want them offset like that. Okay, so we're done with that step. So again, on this front piece and that front piece that are attached to the 2x4s, that's the 36.5-inch piece. Then on the sides here, you're going to be doing the 37.5-inch piece on each side here, attached to the inner side of the 2x6s, offset like that. Okay, so you basically want it to look like that. So that's that step. Now we got to start working on putting together the seat braces. So let me start working on that next, and we'll go from there. Okay, so next we're going to start our seat supports. So now what we're going to do is take the 4 23-inch pieces and the 4 22-inch pieces. So what you're going to do is take your longer 23-inch piece, line it up on its side, take your shorter 22 and line it up onto the 23-inch board, just like so. Now, you don't have to do the miter cuts at the bottom like that. I did, just to make it look a little better. So I just measured down my midway point and then cut the bottom off on a 45. And I did the same over here as well. So again, the miter cuts on the bottom of the seats are just purely optional for looks only. So again, you're gonna mount the 22-inch on top of the 23-inch. If you want to miter the bottoms, you can, but that's what we're gonna start with. Zip 2 screws on there, and we're gonna do all 4 of those. Once I get those done, we'll be right back and we'll start installing them on the table legs themselves. Okay, so just to show you real quick what I did to create my bottom miter cuts, I just took my speed square, took the back measurement right here, find my middle point, flip the speed square over, find the middle point, draw the line, take my saw, whack that off, and that's what I get. So it's very simple. Okay, so we got our 4 braces cut. We have a 23-inch, and the 22 is stacked on top of the 23. And the reason we do that is because you're gonna have a 23-inch board here, but with the 22 stacked on top, now you have a full 23-inch. So the easiest way to mount it is basically take any scrap wood you have, cut 2 13-inch blocks. Again, any scrap you have that, as long as you're at 13 inches, cut them 13 inches high. And then I did it on this side too. Okay, those are just our brace supports. So at 13 inches high, again, you can clamp it. I have a bunch of these clamps laying around, so I just clamp it on there. Then you're just gonna take your brace with the miter cut facing down, slide it right in there, just like so. So then basically it's gonna look just like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and throw a few screws in from this side. And then we're gonna throw a few more screws in from this side. And that's what you want it to look like. Once you have it screwed on, then you can take your bottom pieces off and move on to the next leg. So let me finish that up and I'll be right back. Okay, and when you're all done, you just wanna make sure you're checking for everything's level. So we're pretty good, right on the money. So that's the first one. So now that I already took my braces off, that's what you want it to look like. Again, I just threw a few screws on this side, and then I threw in another few screws on this side. So now we have a nice steady corner. So again, I'm gonna go ahead now, do the same exact thing that we did here at this corner and do that with each of the other 3 corners. Once we're done with that, we'll take some of those braces that we were cutting earlier that are gonna basically come in like this. We just have to cut them and get them in there on an angle like that. So once we're all done, we'll do that last. Okay, so now that we got all of the angled braces on below, a couple of my miter cuts were a little bit off, but not a big deal. I just went ahead on the inside here. I put about 3 screws on the inside, and I put 1 up under here, getting it into the bottom seat. So again, nice and sturdy. And again, once we put the top pieces on, everything's gonna tighten up pretty good, as well as when we put the seats on, that'll tighten everything up and square everything off. So you could start with the top next, which if you're gonna start with the top, you wanna just kind of make sure you're in square, maybe take your diagonal measurements from diagonal to diagonal, both sides, just to kind of make sure you're in square. Or you could start with the seats. Either way is up to you. For now, because the table is elevated on a table, I'm just gonna go ahead and do the majority of the seats, and then I'll just kind of lean over and do the tabletop last. So when it comes to the seats, you're just gonna take the 2x6s that we cut at 47.5 inches, and you're just gonna pretty much line them up to the edge of your seat bracket here. And you wanna make sure you equally measure out your distances here so that your overhang is even on both sides. And then it's up to you again, if you want to miter off the corners here. I just measured in from the very outside corner 1.5 inches on both sides and just mitered off the corner on both sides. So essentially it's just going to give you a little bit of a smoother look right here at each corner. So again, just like we did on the bottom, gives you just a little bit more of a nicer look. So once you get that all lined up, drop 2 screws in from the top. I just took my carpenter's pencil and used that as a spacer, shoved it down in between, and then lined up my next board to the edge, dropped 2 screws in, moved my pencil over here, dropped the pencil in, 2 screws there. You want to use something like this, a pencil, anything really, but something like this thickness, because you got to keep in mind wood is going to expand and contract. So you can do different spacing however you'd like, but typically when I'm doing decking or something like this, since I have my carpenter's pencil, I just shove that down in there flat, so it's thinner. So I just drop it in there, squeeze my board up against it, drop 2 screws in, pull it, you're done. So that's really one whole bench right there. So next I'm just gonna do the other 3 sides. And then once that's done, then I'll actually pull the table down onto the floor. Then we'll make sure everything's in square, and then we'll start just dropping the top on. The same thing, you're just gonna line the top up, the top boards to your edges, line everything up. And now you might have to adjust your spaces a little up here because you have so many boards to line across. So basically, before I'd start drilling any of the top, I would line all of your boards up equally, get them in distance, and then actually use your spacer and see where everything lines up. But again, you just want to make sure everything's lined up and evenly spaced, but we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and finish up my last 3 seating areas, and then we'll be back for the tabletop. Okay, so when I started measuring for my seat miters at the corners, again, you can really choose whatever size you want, but I just took my square here. I measured in about 1.5 inches right there. Flip it over on the bottom. Measured in about 1.5 inches there. Flip it over. Took it out. Connected my 2 dots. I drew my line, took it over to my saw, mitered it off, and that's what you get, that nice clean corner cut. So I ended up getting the first 3 benches. I'm working on the last one, finish that up and square up the table, and then we'll start getting the top mounted on. Okay, so we are back. We got the top mounted. Now the top wasn't so bad, except for trying to find the right spacing. I tried using my carpenter's pencil and it wasn't quite enough. I tried a couple other things, wasn't quite enough. So I actually found that a utility knife that I had laying in the toolbox was like almost the perfect thickness. Now you could take the time and try to measure it all out yourself. That's perfectly fine. I'm not a professional carpenter. I'm just more of a, like I always say, I'm just a normal guy on the DIY. I'm trying to do stuff that's fairly simple and easy. So I just took this utility knife, used it as my spacer, okay, like that, and it actually measured out pretty evenly. So again, all you gotta do is figure it out. Start your first board, mount it to the edge of your leg here, and then the edge of your leg here. Mount that in, and make sure you're putting a couple extra screws on those outside boards at the corners, because that's what's really gonna create a good bit of stabilization for this table. So once you get that first board on, make sure you keep everything level and lined up, put your screws in, line it all up, and there you go. So that's it. That is what this table looks like. Okay, so let's keep in mind, I am 6'4", 270 pounds. And I'm sitting on this table right now, and my legs have plenty of clearance under here. And again, I'm right here with my elbows right at the table in a normal sitting position. So again, I have plenty of room here for, you know, my wife and my couple kids to sit around. So I have my wife and 3 kids. So all 5 of us could easily sit at this table and actually hang out and enjoy a meal and whatnot. So if you're wondering what size it is or how it would fit a normal family, you could easily fit a family of 5 or 6 on this. Technically, 4 adults very comfortably, 8 kids very comfortably, 2 adults and 3 to 4 kids easy. So that's pretty much it for that. It was not very hard to build, and it's pretty sturdy. It's pretty heavy actually. I mean, it's a lot of wood. It ain't really going anywhere. So then what I gotta do next is, whenever I do get around to getting an umbrella, I'll just get a hole saw and cut a hole in the middle, maybe put some kind of stabilizer bracket there, and we'll be good to go. But for now, as a quick and easy picnic table for our back deck, just so my family can sit down, have a meal, you know, play a board game at night or whatnot, this actually turned out pretty good. It was fairly simple, and again, it cost me about $180 in lumber, but keep in mind, that's current inflation rates. Lumber right now is ridiculously high. So again, if you happen to have wood laying around, you could probably do this for a lot cheaper. So for my first time building this based off of online directions, it turned out pretty good. I mean, I had to make a few tweaks here and there just because the online directions were not very descriptive. So hopefully this video helps you out when you're trying to build one yourself. But again, overall, that's what it looks like. Now, all I have to do is take my palm sander, sand it down a little bit, get rid of some of the rough edges, get it nice and smooth, and then I'll throw a coat of stain on it, and then we'll be done. But I'm not gonna film the staining of this just because I don't want this video being too long. So we're just gonna go ahead and end it here. But overall, this square picnic table design that I found online turned out pretty good. Okay guys, so that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Everything was pretty easy. I just had to figure out a few of those cuts, especially on the bench braces where we had the miter cut on both sides. I had to really adjust that because I made a mistake in my measurements, and luckily I had a couple more pieces of 2x4 laying around that I was able to fix it. But just keep in mind, I'm using these dimensions that I found online. Some of them were off about 1/8 of an inch, but nothing major. But again, just try it out, make a few measurements, make a few tweaks, make sure everything's squared and lined up, and then everything should turn out pretty good. So that's it for today's video. I hope you like it. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And if you could do me a favor, subscribe to the channel because it definitely helps me out. So again, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every one of you. I truly appreciate you all. And as always, see you in the next video.